Now we're going to go to a consideration item. This is the one, ID 18314. This is the ordinance regulating the parking of oversized vehicles, second reading. In a minute, you'll get your turn, sir. Report from the city attorney. Mr. Callahan, do you have something to report?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, this is the second reading. Last council meeting, we introduced the ordinance with a couple of amendments requested by the council members, and so I'll review that just briefly. If you have the ordinance in front of you, what we did is we extended the period of time for which folks can park in front of their personal residences for purposes of loading and unloading a recreational vehicle, for example, or for cleaning the recreational vehicle, for example. It extends it to a 48-hour period, and so that was one of the additional exceptions that was requested by the council, and so it's folded into this ordinance under section 20-18.030 subsection B. There was one additional subsection that I added for emergency vehicles just to make sure that they weren't captured in this prohibition. So those are the two small amendments that were made to this ordinance in order to reflect council members' requests from the last meeting. And in your report, there are a number of questions that were presented and responded to, particularly those questions that Councilmember Davis raised. And so I just want to make sure that we call those out. And we're having some technical difficulties over here, it sounds like.
He's on the line, it's a second line ringing in.
Okay. So that's it, Mr. Mayor. So I'm available for any questions on this.
I will start to my right. Councilmember Davis, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Callahan, thank you for the update, including all the questions that I had raised prior to, but just want to touch on number 2 there. Has the city or the Salinas Police Department come up with a resolution as far as the tow companies to tow these oversized RVs?
No, but we're close to doing so. We think that we have all of the details worked out. It's just a matter of drafting them up. It's sort of on delay right now just because of some internal things that are going on in the police department, but we're confident that we'll have that resolved. And keep in mind that if the ordinance is adopted tonight, it'll be effective 30 days from tonight, so we do have a 30-day period to get that contract with the tow companies fully resolved.
And from what you know about those negotiations, is it going to cost the city any extra money? My understanding is that it costs the tow companies anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 to dispose of these RVs that are maybe less than repairable.
It won't cost the city any money, Councilmember Davis. What we're looking at is a credit for those tow companies if they were to tow RVs against their franchise fees.
So can you explain that a little bit more in detail?
So each of the companies pays a franchise fee to the city, basically for the privilege of being on the rotation. So if a tow company, and there are only 3 that have the capacity right now to tow large oversized vehicles, if they tow one on behalf of the city, they would get a credit against that franchise fee that they pay on an annual basis.
And do we know what that credit might be?
We estimated, I think it's $1,000 right now. That's what we're looking at right now.
Per vehicle?
Per vehicle.
And what do they pay the city to be on our rotation?
It goes up each year. I think it's about $15,000 right now.
And how many tow companies are we looking at being able to tow these oversized RVs?
As I mentioned, there are 3 that are currently capable of doing so.
But we don't know if all 3 will want to. We could end up with just 2.
Could end up with 1.
Okay. And assuming that we tow over 15, so let's say that they tow 20 vehicles in a calendar year or fiscal year, that's $5,000 more that the city would owe them, that they would take credit for the next fiscal year? Or?
The city would not owe them anything. The city would not roll it over to the next fiscal year. As soon as they reach that maximum amount of their franchise fee, there would be no additional credits given.
Okay. And I noticed in your report you do indicate some different municipal code sections, 29-9 specifically, and that prohibits any pollutants or wastewater being put down into our city storm drains, correct?
That's correct.
And is that something that we currently enforce?
Yes.
How successful are we at enforcing that?
We collect fines, we prosecute misdemeanor penalties of that section, so it's something that we are successfully implementing.
And so one of the prior issues that came up and was about wastewater and leaking of sewage from vehicles. And it wasn't the RVers who are doing their due diligence and being responsible RVers. This was for a select few that were being irresponsible and dumping their sewage down our storm drains. And that was kind of put up front and center, but you're saying that we actually have a Salinas Municipal Code section that deals with that, and we're actually pretty successful at enforcing that against irresponsible RVers
And businesses, yes.
and businesses. Okay. And can you explain real quick, so the appropriate signage, and before last city council meeting, you talked about putting them at the entrances to the cities, I'm assuming by the on-ramps into the cities off of the 101. Where else will we be looking at putting appropriate signage, and what would be considered appropriate either under the law or by the vehicle code?
So the first question was, where else would we put it? And as I mentioned at the last meeting, it would be at the entrances to the different neighborhoods in the city. And so the appropriate signage would be a warning that you cannot park an oversized vehicle on city streets. It would be that simple, and it would cite to the code section.
Okay. So in addition to on-ramps and off-ramps at the entrances to residential zones, and
That's correct.
would this include industrial zones as well?
Wherever those would be able to be parked, signage would need to be placed.
Okay. One of the issues that came up was parking vehicles close to an intersection and not being able to see around it. So if you had a 7-foot, let's say a 6.5-foot Dodge pickup truck that had a lift on it, make it over 7 feet tall, which would be a violation of this section if it were to pass today. One of the issues was at an intersection, someone coming up and making a right or left onto an intersection wouldn't be able to see around that vehicle because of the height. Is there a city ordinance or a vehicle code section that is in place that would prohibit the parking of a vehicle so close to an intersection, kind of as Ms. Warden talked about today at public comments?
I believe there is. I'm not 100% certain, but I believe there is.
And if there wasn't, we could always paint the curb red by 20 feet down to make it unlawful for someone to park that close to an intersection.
Provided that corner warrants such treatment and your Traffic and Transportation Commission approve it or recommend it to the council.
So there is a, what I'm getting at is there is a mechanism in place for us to enforce the safety aspect on an oversized vehicle parked close to an intersection if we chose to enforce it in that manner.
In those particular situations where it's parked in close proximity to an intersection, yes.
Thank you. Let me go back to tow trucks under section D of the, you don't specifically say tow trucks, but you talk about emergency vehicles.
Right, emergency vehicles meaning fire trucks, police vehicles.
Would a tow truck be considered an emergency vehicle if they are in contract with the city?
No.
So part of the rotational requirements, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is 30 minutes. So if a police officer on the side of the road requests a tow truck to tow a regular vehicle, that tow company who's on a rotation has 30 minutes to respond out, or they get passed over for the next. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So with this ordinance in place, a tow truck, I believe is over 7 feet tall, would now be prohibited from being parked during certain hours of the night in front of a residence where that tow operator possibly lives. So he would have to go to the tow yard, wherever that may be, pick up his tow truck, and then respond out to a request for rotational tow truck by our police department. That could, in fact, take them longer than 30 minutes.
That's something the tow company is going to have to resolve.
So it's possible then that by passing this ordinance today, with that 7 feet ordinance and the fact that we require some of these tow trucks to come out and respond, that we could be, for lack of a better word or similarly, is shooting ourselves in the foot, because now it could be taking longer than 30 minutes. And now our officers are going to be out of service that much longer waiting for a rotational tow truck to come, because we've now implemented this and didn't carve out an exemption for tow trucks who are on our rotational list. Well,
again, let's look at the findings that are established in the ordinance and the reason why this ordinance is being put forth. It's to make sure that the roadways are safe. That prohibits large vehicles from being parked on the roadways so that pedestrians and motorists aren't affected by oversized vehicles. So you may be concerned about the response time of a tow company that needs to resolve that issue internally, and you're balancing that against the safety of the community. Quite frankly, I'm not sure I care about the response time for the tow company when it's compared to the safety of the community.
And I would stipulate that the safety of the community is being used as a cover, if you will, or a facade onto what this ordinance is really getting at, is with people living in RVs, and we're using safety as a cover. And quite frankly, in the question and answers that we just had going back and forth, we already have mechanisms in place to hold accountable those who are unlawfully dumping sewage down our storm drains, which you indicate that we are successfully doing. You also indicate that we do have mechanisms in place where we can prohibit where we can actually keep from or paint near the corners a safety issue and concern about someone coming up into an intersection so they can see oncoming traffic safely. Not that there's a question there, but I'm just looking at this right now as we have laws in place that we aren't enforcing or should be enforcing to the maximum, and instead we're trying to pass something else that I fear that is going to be unenforceable. I have no further questions right now, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Barrera.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask Assistant Chief Martinez a couple of questions. Assistant Chief, I don't know you very well, but I know of your work in our community, and I know you're a sincere public servant. So the questions I'm going to ask you and I are on the same team here, but I have a responsibility as well as you do. Are tow trucks allowed to park in the residential areas? You know, the long flatbeds?
According to the ordinance, they would not be able to allow park there.
But right now, are they?
Yes, right now, I mean, it's open parking. You can park anything in our neighborhoods. And, you know, and the sad part about it is that most of our communities have accepted that we won't do anything. And so they just not called. Yeah. So if you drive to the neighborhood, you're going to see those flatbeds, you're going to see semi-trucks, you're going to see RVs, you're going to see buses, you're going to see bobtails, you're going to see everything. So to answer your question, they're parking there. And the only way we know is that if somebody calls us up and complains, like I get a lot of complaints on Griffith Street, on Stephanie Street, right? We come in and really, other than tagging them for 72 hours, or tagging them because they're leaking sewage, very hard to tow those vehicles because we have nothing in place. Most of the ordinances we have to do with vehicles at, 6,000 pounds or over, 10,000 pounds, right? But the problem with that is that some of those vehicles they're under the 10,000, between 6,000 and 10,000, so very, very hard to enforce anything. And I would say on a daily basis, I get emails from City Council to deal with this issue, and we have no teeth. We have nothing to do, so it is an issue. I understand where the councilman says, well, it's an easy fix by painting the curbs red. I've been trying to get some curbs on a bridge near a high school painted red for almost 7 months. We just don't have the staff. We don't have the time. There's a process it has to go to. So it's not something that I can, like I said, let me volunteer with my Explorers and go paint a red curb. I can't do that. I have to wait and go through the process. So to answer your question in the long way, yes, they're parking there.
So, Assistant Chief, I'm trying to understand if there's an ordinance in place. If I'm driving, I don't have a big car, it says Nissan, but maybe it's not registered, and a police officer sees me. I'm just really trying to understand why is it, and I hear what you're saying, that for some reason we can't enforce it, it's a cat and mouse game, but if there's an ordinance in place, if you have an unregistered vehicle, whether it's an RV, truck, Volkswagen, whatever it is, motorcycle, you get cited. I mean,
so on an unregistered vehicle, if we can tow it, we will. And if it's, and I'm going to call it an undersized vehicle, if it's not an oversized vehicle, then the rotation of the tow companies will come in and they will take the vehicle. Where we have an issue is the oversized vehicles. And some of the vehicles right now, with the issues with the tow companies is that they'll come in and tow something that they can tow and take to the yard. The issue they have is with some of the RVs, right, that basically, because of the sewage coming out, all the hazardous waste, is they can't take that to a dismantle, they have to pay. So that's the issue we're having right now with the oversized vehicle. And again, on a lot of our city streets are not posted. So I give you on Griffith Street, I always get complaints on Griffith Street between Alisal and John. There is no signage there that you can't park oversized vehicles. There's no signage where, so for me to go there, they're parked there. I can cite them for 72 hours, but some of those RVs, they can't move. So I don't have that ordinance in here, or I don't have the contract in place with the tow companies, to take away that blight, take away that broken window theory. And so, and for me, it's a two-prong for us to make our city, the blight go away, or make our city, more safe, is to have those ordinances in place.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Mr. Corpus, in supporting the police department, and I know that we keep saying the county has to play with us and we have to play with the county or work together or whatever it is. Do we have a plan in place? Because it is going to be, if the city council does enforce this ordinance, does vote on it today, we're going to have some problems. There's going to be people displaced. We already know that. But do we have we been able to identify a site or something that we can actually help? Remember that mother that was here? She said she had a business. She lost it. She lost her home. She's not looking for a handout. As a matter of fact, she invested the last $10,000 she had. She bought an RV because that's the only home she could afford for her family. So she's not looking for a handout. But I think for those types of individuals, because we have the lawbreakers, we already know that, but for the type of individuals that are really trying to help themselves, do we have a plan in place, a piece of property, anything that we can think of at this point?
Well, there are two parts to your question. We have, and you have approved an agreement with the county to have a permanent shelter, one. Two, which would also be a site for what we call permanent supportive housing. That's for people that are disabled mentally and otherwise. There's funding for that. And third are the navigation services or wraparound social services, where the homeless people that are in these facilities can get direct help, whether it's a referral to a health clinic or to something else that might get them back on their feet, and then eventually to housing. We are working with the county overall and the other cities with this whole issue of RVs. The county had a severe problem on Lapis, and I would venture that some of the RVs that were no longer on Lapis are probably in our city. So it's a countywide issue, not easily solved by just one city. So you have before you some issues that, as I think City Attorney Callahan pointed out, this is not directed specifically at a group. It's directed at improving the neighborhoods in terms of the blight that's there. Separate from that, I think, but somewhat related, is the whole question of how do we resolve the homelessness issue, not only in this city, other cities in the county, and countywide.
Yeah. So Mr. Corpus, let me just ask you, and I can understand this, we need to take care of our city. I guess, Mr. Corpus, my question is, okay, so the ordinance is enforced already. We go after these RVs that are creating hazardous safety problems, which they are, some of them. We tow them. You just mentioned the word blight. All of a sudden, and this is a question, do you think we may just create a little bit more blight? Now these individuals or person does not have an RV, all of a sudden their RV is going to be at the yard. They have to pay a fine, just like anybody would if you get your car towed. That's happened to me. Do we create more blight by doing that?
I'm not sure that more blight's created. I think what we're trying to do is, Assistant Chief Martinez said, I think we're trying to make sure that our neighborhoods are safe and healthy. And I think that's the spirit of the ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah, because, we keep focusing on RVs. It's not RVs, it's large commercial vehicles, and that's where we're going, right? RVs is another issue with the sewage and stuff, but again, when we're talking about oversized vehicle, everybody focuses on RVs. And I think what you're going to find out is that, when you do have an ordinance for oversized vehicles, is the oversized vehicles parking in our neighborhoods, because of the ordinance, are going to go somewhere else. Are we going to solve the issue with parking? No. All we're going to do is displace it somewhere else, displace it to county or somewhere. But the thing is that, we get a constant concern from the community on these oversized vehicles parking in our neighborhood. And so we have to find solutions on that help to our community, and this is one. We do have about 3 or 4 ordinances that deal with vehicles, but it's not enough to solve the issue we got right now in our community for these oversized vehicles. And again, when we get into the black letter law, to spirit of law, there are going to be things where, you do have that nice truck, 26-inch wheels lifted, where, you got to use a little bit of common sense. Yeah. And that's where the spirit of law will come in when we'll look at those. Somebody coming in that's going to park on their U-Haul because they're going to move. We'll work with that. But we need something in there, the black letter law, that's going to say that you cannot have this oversized vehicle parked in your neighborhood. Because, again, I get those, weekly from city council. I've got this concern in my neighborhood. And I keep telling my community members that, everybody thinks, okay, gang's my number one thing, violence. It's not, it's parking. And whoever solves parking, they're going to build a statue of them out here in City Hall. Because believe it or not, that is a major issue in our community.
Yeah. Don Reynolds. Statue of Don Reynolds. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Gloria, questions?
Yes. Chief Penn, I have a question. Right now, currently, help me remember, is it posted, or somebody here, there's Carrie, from Parks and Rec, do we have it posted in our parks, our city parks? No parking, no RV parking? Is that
I couldn't answer that because I really don't look at this. Is Don Reynolds here? Do we have
in our
posting
parks,
for no
city parks?
RV parking in our parks?
Not in general. Most recently, we did post in Sherwood Park. That's the only park I'm familiar with.
We did post it at Sherwood, no RV parking?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's my question. Last night, there was a meeting here last night, and I see this right now like, yes, I'm totally hearing my community where I live in Laurel Heights and the rest of the city, where these tow trucks that are parked in our neighborhoods and these big vehicles and all that, but I'm seeing 2 issues here tonight. I see that issue that we need to take control of, that we need to do something tonight, but then I see the other issue, and we keep going around and around. We're like, wait a minute, we've got people in RVs that they need a place to go, because we're just moving the problem from one area to the other. So how do we all do that? I'm really excited about hearing you, who were here last night, to see what happened. What conclusion did everybody come to? So I think I will now leave my other comments and come back, because I want to hear what they said.
Councilwoman Craig, comment or questions?
I recognize some of these questions are a whole bunch of hypotheticals, but my interest in this had really not a lot to do with RVs in District 5, but rather we have a huge influx of labor contracting buses that are parking in the neighborhoods. And so, and also work vehicles. So utility companies sometimes allow, and construction companies sometimes allow their employees to take home large vehicles and park them in front of their residence. I had a bus company, like one of our local giant, tour bus companies, allows their drivers to drive their bus home if they have an early shift in the morning. So there's like the Metallica tour bus is on a side street and people are having difficulty being able to pull out of their driveways, blocking driveways, things along that nature. So my question for you, and this is kind of, so with the recent shift in now you have 48 hours to move that vehicle in front of your home, The issue isn't so much long-term parking, but rather consistent, long, day-wise, meaning they park overnight, they go to work, they come home, they park overnight, they go to work, they come home, they park overnight, but it's a consistent problem months on end. And so if there are issues with people who own a home but have an oversized work vehicle, are they not towable after within 48 hours?
No, Councilmember Craig, they are, because that 48-hour exception provides only relief for the purpose of loading, unloading, cleaning, or other activity
Got it.
incident to travel or recreational use. So the circumstances that you described where an individual is driving their large work truck home and parking it there day after day, it doesn't fall within this exception.
Okay.
It would be subject to the prohibition.
Okay, thank you. That's really was the most confusing part that I had in terms of the provision that we brought forward, so thank you.
We're going to go to Councilmember Villegas to see if he has any questions from Texas.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. For Mr. Corpus, will passing this ordinance go towards the goal of making the city a safer one, as outlined in our city plan?
Well, as we discussed, Councilmember Villegas, the intent of the ordinance is to improve the public health, safety, and welfare of the city. That is the spirit in which this was drafted and how it's laid out. So it's not essentially trying to sort out any one resident or type of individual or group of individuals.
Okay. Also, do you believe allowing RVs to park anywhere and people to set up an RV home on any street of their choosing goes towards a safe, livable neighborhood?
Well, under this ordinance, they would be subject to the same provisions everybody else would be that is an oversized vehicle, so they'd all be treated the same.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Corpus. Mr. Callahan, in respect to Councilmember Davis's questions and comments, is this ordinance enforceable?
In my opinion, it is, yes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. No further questions.
Councilmember McShane, do you have any questions?
Sure, just a few. When it comes to our police department, code enforcement, and Serco, how is communication between the three units? Maybe our assistant chief can comment on that. I'm just not sure that we have the personnel prepared to make this work.
And the answer is we do. Right now we have our CSOs that are doing this, and one of the things that myself and Roberto have been tasked with is that, our police department can do more with our officers. We're used to doing things that we say, well, that's not within our job description, but it is. So that's one additional, for community policing, when you're assigned a beat, part of that beat is make sure that, there is no abandoned vehicles and, enforce the parking and so forth. So it would be the way we change the business, but, as of right now, if we continue moving the way we're doing, we'll have staffing to make this work.
And how do you, just one more time, and I feel like you've gone through this a few times, how do you anticipate rolling this out?
Well, again, for us, you'll have a grace period. It'll be a grace period again. It can be 30 days, it can be 45 days, just to make sure that everybody knows what we're happening. We'll give out warnings, we'll put out the message board and so forth, and the message will get out there. And it'll be like anything else. If we cite somebody that has a U-Haul out there and all of a sudden they come in and they want to talk about the citation, again, common sense, spirit of law, we'll sit down, okay, we weren't aware of that, and we'll go ahead and abate the citation if we can. So it'll be a soft breaking in of the ordinance. It won't be something that there's a drop dead, this is where we're going to go. It'll be a soft opening.
As a law enforcement professional, do you believe we have a problem?
Yes.
And do you believe that this will help to alleviate that?
Yes, the city I came from, we had the same situation, especially being border with San Francisco. It seems that we got all the buses and all the trucks and everything, and so they put together a similar ordinance that the city attorneys Chris put together, and And it did work. What we ended up doing afterwards was designating certain areas where in the city where, you know, you have a PG&E truck or you have a business where it was for commercial parking only, but you had it from a certain time, let's say from 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning. And it worked pretty well.
Is your staff prepared as they make contact with vehicles that say may have no registration, maybe leaking? Think of the worst case scenario, the transmission's completely dysfunctional. Is your staff prepared to perform outreach? You know, say if resources that are available could be shared?
Yes, that was already in place. One of the things that the city's been part of, again, part of your homeless outreach program here is that, we have all the options when it comes to shelters. If we contact somebody, we have phone numbers through dispatch to try to get them in a shelter or something. I mean, so there is outreach out there. I mean, for us, it's not black and white. My officers do have a heart when we come up to something like that. But as you're going to find out, there's just, there's people out there that I'm afraid because of it, we do have to enact ordinances like this to get compliance.
Sure. Have you spoken with any other law enforcement professionals from other jurisdictions that have enacted similar ordinances locally?
No, I have not.
Okay, all right. That's all, thanks.
Thank you.
And just a refresher, Ray, what sort of fines are on the line should we neglect? Let's just say we let this go awry. Let's say we welcomed, to expand the challenges. The NPEDs fines, how much is it a day? Is it per incident? Just a refresher.
Are you referring to our violation of our
Correct.
National Pollution Elimination Discharge System permit?
Right.
Yes, you can get fined up to $10,000 a day.
Per incident or just?
Per incident.
And I mean, do they take that seriously?
Well, absolutely. We've been fined before.
More than once?
I'll have to get that information specifically.
Okay, and maybe just a word or two as to our cooperation with the county on homelessness. Would you say it's improved? Is it improving? Is it getting worse? This is a clear instance where we need to be working closely together. At Councilmember Barrera's meeting last night, I was glad to see that Supervisor Parker was here. She, in our own conversations, one-on-one, seemed to characterize an improving working relationship on this issue.
I think there's an improving relationship. We would again ask the county to approve the agreement you approved based on their review, which is the allowing us to develop their site at 1220 Natividad or wherever they want the permanent shelter to be. That would be on their county land. So we're waiting for the county to be a full partner.
Okay. And then maybe one last question for the city attorney. You've spent tremendous time on this. I know we've been working on it since August. It seems some council members seem to be more focused on commercial vehicles. Others seem to be more focused on RVs. Our discussion has led me to believe it's one and the same, though the impact may be different from a code section and ordinance. From a legislation perspective, we're dealing with the same animal, right? I mean, does this need to be chopped up, redigested, and brought back in another 3 to 6 months?
Not unless you all direct that to occur with some proposed amendments or you have some new ideas that come out of tonight's discussion, but the ordinance is pretty objective. It has a height limitation and a length limitation that applies regardless of whether it's a recreational vehicle, a labor bus, Metallica's tour bus, or a boat. All of those things are treated the same under this ordinance.
Yep. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
I was going to take on Chief Martinez a little bit, but I'm going to anyway. I'm not going to let him off the hook about. We have enough officers to do this enforcement, is what I've heard. And I will go a little bit to the citizens that call that say they can't get crimes investigated, but we have enough officers to tow the motorhomes. And I'm going specifically after the motorhomes because I know the semi-trucks are parked out there without tickets and they don't have to wait for this ordinance. So my concern is if we're not citing them now under the city code where they can be fined what makes me think that this ordinance will improve whatever it is we're going to do?
Well, for me, I think some of the reasons why we don't do citations as officers, because that's never been our culture. Our culture is to go out there and handle the calls. We use the excuse that we're too busy to do those type of extra activity that patrol officers are going to do. So part of the concept has been changing. We're doing now. So in other words, when somebody tells me that we don't have time to go to a community meeting, we make time. If, again, I get the request from City Council that I got an issue on a street, we have somebody look at it. We take care of it. So it's just a way we need to change the culture in our organization. And so it's just another additional job. One of the things that we did for the shift change is we have the overlap. And so basically part of that is that so each officer, we can assign a beat because that beat becomes his. It's his responsibility. He takes an ownership. And so it's just our leadership to get out there and to ensure that if we got a parking issue, that the officers go out there and do their job.
Second question will be with revolving the motorhomes that have children in them. And I know there are some that we're probably going to tow that have children in them. I went down and saw some of them on Griffin. I'm hoping that we have CPS online to take them to someplace better than our warming shelter. Or we will be doing a resolution to say, you're separating the families and putting them in the warming shelter. They're doing that at the border, which I don't agree with. So let's look at this very realistically, and the officers have to be ready to address this. Are they ready to do this? Or are the parents going to be here saying they took my kids away and they shoved me in the warming shelter? So we have to have answers to that before I vote tonight.
Well, the thing is, again, I've only been here 7 months, but the one thing I can say about, public safety is we care for our citizens. So even, it doesn't have to be an RV, it can be a vehicle, it could be something. And we do reach out. I mean, we have a lot of program here in Monterey County, especially, and again, I've heard stories, and so has the other assistant chief or officers, take money out of their pocket to do things, to purchase things, to put them in hotels. So I honestly believe that, my officers, if they come up across somebody, they've got a phone call to make, whether it's CPS, whether it's a hotel, a voucher or something, we'll come up with something. I've not heard any complaints like that come across my desk since I've been here, where we haven't shown that compassion, to somebody that we're dealing with out in the streets.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're now going to open it up for public comment. This is a public hearing. The microphone is now open.
Hello, board members. I was here last night at the meeting with Mr. Barrera, Mr. McShane right here, and a few other people, and we had some ideas. We sat here, we discussed, and there was a few people here. Mr. Barrera, Mr. McShane will tell you that, that I think it would work. All of us, because it's just like she said, we just keep going in circles, and we ain't solved nothing. And we're back to the drawing board every time. We need to find a solution, because I know you guys are getting tired of seeing me up here, and it's like, we need to compromise here, but, all we need, is just a piece of property, somebody that'll let us have it, and we could control it, where it's kept clean and all that, The stuff we were discussing last night, why don't you guys say, give us a chance, let's try it out before you start throwing. I understand about the residential parking. If I had a house, people parked in front of my house, like, I'd be mad too, but RVs really, and you too, Mr. Mayor, really, you're gonna go as far as calling CPS on people who have children? How low are you willing to take this? We're here trying to compromise with you guys, trying to give you guys ideas, work with us, We just keep going. This has been going on, 2.5 years? And we still ain't got nowhere. Thank you.
My name is Eric Peterson, and I've got two different perspectives on this. One is the owner of a medium-sized RV. First of all, my next-door neighbor says he doesn't mind it when I park it in front of my house. But we have an existing ordinance that gives me one night parked in front of my house for loading or unloading. And I know it's enforced because I got cited once 30 hours after I parked it someplace. And that was a few years ago. It had a Jill Lutzer supervisor sign on the back. That might have been a factor. But we've got the tool we need, and we don't need something else, But more than that, this seems like another attempt to kick around our less than fortunate friends and neighbors. And we've got a lot of good people. It's no secret I lived in my car some time ago for 12 months. And I know what it's like to have to, not necessarily know where you're going to get your shower or if you're going to get to take a shower. And what we need to do, I've said this many times, is look at this comprehensively and actually fix our homeless situation. If we actually try to do it, we can be like Salt Lake City and reduce homelessness 91%. It's not that difficult, but you have to want to do it. We have to care for other people, other human beings, same DNA as we have. And maybe that would be difficult for some people. For most people, it's not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello again.
Now you're up.
Again, I'm Art Woodfin. And I consider myself that black buzzard circling around the city looking for the next carcass. I noticed in the county free newspaper a nice article that got me off my duff because I've been recuperating now for a year and a half. But this is important to me. I believe I started writing this. The only one is going to make out on this is the city attorney, because he's going to be defending you in court from San Jose, San Francisco, to wherever the 9th District Court is, because you're opening yourself up to lawsuits. You have one, you have one, you have one, I have one. And what does it say? We can park in places that you can't move us from. I don't know if that's good or if it's bad. I get it, and I'm parked right now on the curb out there. I've been there, this is my 4th hour, because I came early. I wanted to get a place to park. I thought this place would be jammed today. I think you're premature on taking on this ordinance now. I think there's some more thinking. Maybe, I hate to say this, but do you understand what this does? It says they can park anywhere they want and they can sleep in their car and there's nothing you can do. And it's enforced by the state of California, not by the local judge, and you have to defend it. Now, the next thing is handicapped people have protection from.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Yep. Don't pass it yet. Consider it some more. The only, again, as I say, the only one that's going to justify doing it is the one that makes the money on it.
My name is James Watkins. I've been a resident of Salinas for quite a while now. I do believe that this issue is, it should be split up. The issue of the motorhomes sitting out on a street somewhere because they're homeless, I think that's separate than having vehicles, oversized vehicles in neighborhoods. There is when we bought our house, I live out in the Creek Bridge area, been there for almost 30 years. There were rules set for homeowners that you couldn't have an RV parked out, you couldn't have a trailer parked out, and I'm not talking about in the street, I'm talking about in the driveway. You couldn't have a vehicle that couldn't move sitting in the driveway or in the street, and these things are happening anyway. Obviously a lot of people have moved out, new people move in, maybe they don't know about those, but also the parking at the close to an intersection, a large bobtail truck that's near me, and we can't see around the corner, and accidents have almost happened, and I'm sure they will eventually. But that's my issue, is in residential areas, these large vehicles, and I'm not talking about tow trucks, and I understand that. If they have to be on call, they're at home and they get called at midnight to go out on a call, they've got to have their vehicle there. But I'm talking about people that have their own RVs and so forth sitting.
Thank you.
Mary Ann Warden again. I'm going to speak on what I've done when I was on traffic and when I was on the committee that brought this years ago of trailers and motorhomes in neighborhoods, because on our corner of the Pacific and Del Monte, we had little kids with their heads sticking out of the windows and their bucket underneath their deals, and so when the car came, it almost missed the child's head, hit the mirror. That's when I got on my bang wagon and started complaining about it. John Wong was the other one that was on the committee, and numerous other ones. But on the traffic, we never gave permission to anybody to bring buses to park in neighborhoods. Not farm buses, not like Greyhound buses, whatever you want to call them. They were not supposed to be parked in neighborhoods. Neither were the big tow trucks, only the small tow trucks. Never were we given permission, was there ever a permission given to long ones, right, Eric? Well, anyway, just look on, in the traffic thing, look it up. It was never given. We have in our neighborhood industrial trucks that are parked in my little tiny street. You can't, and they park halfway in your driveway, and when you try to back out, you can't back out. Last Saturday, going down Ryder, looking for where all the music was coming from, I met one of the police officers. There was a bus.
Thank you. Your time is up.
The minibus was parked halfway in the driveway and halfway in the street, and the police officer was here and I was here, and we barely got through. Do you think they got a ticket? Our problem is we haven't been ticketing the people that needed to be ticketed right at the beginning.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
If the problem in the beginning, we wouldn't have the problem now.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Van Gresham. I'd like to just try to encourage you guys to vote against this. One, I don't believe that your premise for the safety of the community is actually valid. Typically, you probably got buses, school buses, ambulances, fire trucks. Have any of you ever made any effort to make these things smaller? And if they truly are dangerous because they're big, what have you done about it? So I'll rest my case on that one. Now, there is a lot of things that can be done. And neighborhoods can be posted. You can keep these motorhomes out of neighborhoods, but oddly, you're giving the neighborhoods the right to have the motorhomes in there. But how do you adjudicate this thing? You're given a 30-minute notice to come pick up the thing. If my father were to come down here and visit me in a home, and he's parked on the road and he's visiting, do you solve the problem after the fact that it's been towed? You've already got your police chief adjudicating tickets and letting somebody go and somebody be penalized. Are you going to apply this fairly, or is this going to be just a singled out thing on the homeless? Now, I see it going that way, but what really gets me is all the people that come through Salinas, all the traffic, all the people that are going to the lake, the people that are going camping, renting their RVs, traveling up and down the state, stopping in our motels, needing a place to park when they're there. And they use these roads as well. and people going to the lake need a place to stop, park their boats. There has to be something, or the only thing you can do is any truck, trailer, vehicle over certain size, do not exit, subject to criminal penalties, and post that at your city. And also to consider even a Rolls Royce and a Bentley. Do you realize that they're only within an inch of violating the own ordinance?
Thank you. Your time is up.
You penalize everybody. It's better to apply it fairly and try to find something more adequate.
Good evening. My name is Michael Andrews. I'm a long-time Salinas resident. I was born here. For the first 33 years of my life, I lived in an ordinary house. The city, that is you guys, condemned it at last February, I believe it was, shortly before April. Now, the city inspectors that came out, we asked them where we were supposed to go, and they told us they didn't care and they didn't know. Now, that caused us to buy not one, but 2 RVs because, as my roommate's daughter was staying with us for a little while she got back on her feet. She's only 20 years old and has a child, so we were letting her stay for free, ain't no charge. Now, they're struggling like us. So anyways, I'm on disability. I have a hearing next week. I have chronic pain. I've had it since I was 16 years old. I had almost a 4.0 GPA. Not exactly a 4.0, but close. So anyways, my point here is that you guys have started a problem with the homeless. I mean, I was advocating for the homeless before I was homeless because I met some of them. I talked to them, and I saw what they went through. One gentleman asked me how I felt about water, and I didn't know what he meant. I thought he was asking if I had a phobia. He meant that he was sleeping wet because he was sleeping in a tent, which is what's going to happen to several people if you enact this law. So my recommendation here would be to split it. You're talking about oversized vehicles and commercial vehicles and RVs. So exempt RVs or RVs that are being used as a home, and just as passive for oversized commercial vehicles that are overstaying. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jason Pineda. I'm a homeless resident living in Chinatown. I stay at the Mission. I don't live in a vehicle, but I just as likely could, and I think that the ordinance will more severely impact homeless people overall, and so I think that you guys should just table it until you can find maybe find some other alternatives or like ways to solve the parking problem without having that impact on homeless people. That's people's property and where they live, and everybody needs a place to live, and so it's important that they have that. Secondly, I went to the meeting last night, and although I don't feel that there was much agreement exactly on what to do about the ordinance, it seemed like people were interested in helping and getting involved, and they cared about the issue, and there was some dissent about property owners, but even then, on a positive note, some of those people also were interested in developing programs for the homeless. So I think that one possible solution, at least that would probably impact the parking, is if you could have a place where people could park their RVs. And then maybe it would also, they say that you have to understand an issue, you have to be involved, and if people are worried about trash, maybe people that had a place to park their RVs would have more sense of ownership, and develop, a more caring attitude, if that's what you want to call it, towards dumping trash and, being more thoughtful about that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Steve Eklund again. I've had this thought for a long time, and I've mentioned to the supervisors a lot. Maybe check out Fort Ord as a possibility. I guess that Fort Ord now broken up into this part belongs to Marina, this part belongs to Seaside. I don't know how it works, but it might be a place to start. Maybe you can find some places on Fort Ord where you could have access to bathroom and kitchen facilities and be able to park their vehicles without bothering other people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If you can convince some other cities about it, thank you.
Hello, my name is Raoul Gireaux. I'm a new resident of Salinas, and I'm also homeless. I stay with my sister. And it seems to me that this is not about any prohibiting parking. This is about housing and restricting access to housing to those who are already in dire straits. And it doesn't surprise me because it's in keeping with what's going on in the country and the same old ideas that brought us to this point. However, I urge the council to consider that all of the residents in Salinas be represented and cared for, lest we have people living in smaller cars in front of businesses. Or, you know, what happened in San Francisco, before I came, and I know what's coming. What's coming is gentrification with the people they can no longer afford to live in here. I can't find work. This is me, homeless. Applied everywhere. I can't find work at a nonprofit that works with people that are disenfranchised this way, by their own actions, whatever. But let's not forget all the interest that some of us in this council and the businesses at large in Salinas have in their responsibility to care for those people that they have benefited from. I think it's about time that we look behind that curtain or even under that rug that it seems to be nowadays. I urge you to table this or exempt RVs because, again, I believe that shelter is a basic need and a basic right it should be. And if we can't take care of those people that are residents that are in those kinds of situations, then we're just really shoveling them out until we can. Ask yourselves what happens to those people after they lose their housing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Elaine Garcia. I'm from PNR Towing. And so there's a lot of questions that have been asked about the towing. It does go up to about $2,000. You cannot take it to a junkyard. You have to have it dismantled. And our tow company, the drivers have to go into the motorhomes and they have to dismantle from the inside to take it out. So that is a hazard. If anything leaks, it's just like the city, we get fined. So the tow companies, they're not saying they will not tow motorhomes, but they need help with it. We do pay a fee. Our fee goes up every year. Our fees for the towing don't go up every year. Only your fees do. So with that, now we have the big problem of motorhomes. We don't want to tow anybody's homes from them. The homeless, they need to get together with each other and let them know, take your garbage, everything has to be cleaned because we all see it. But as far as passing something, because now it's getting into where Callahan said, no tow trucks on the street. Remember, we tow for CHP, we tow for the city. God forbid one of you guys get into an accident and we can't keep our tow truck at home. That's going to take us 45 minutes, 50 minutes to pull those cars apart from each other when somebody's trapped in that vehicle. And we are considered emergency vehicles. You guys do have to pull over to the next lane for our tow trucks so we don't get hit. We're assisting the police department, the fire department. So there was in there
Thank you. Your time is up.
okay, there was in there a city code before that tow trucks were exempt from it, so I don't know if it's going to pass.
Thank you.
Mayor Joe, Mr. Callahan, Mr. Corpus, and City Council members. My name is Yolanda Hayes. We have problems with parking throughout Salinas with homeless people. Too many vehicles, whether RVs, boats, trailers, commercial vehicles, or even tents, and they're not vehicles, but we have this problem. we have a serious problem. Having large vehicles parking in our neighborhoods only add to the problem. These RV owners or these tow truck companies, they don't pay extra taxes for their large vehicles, but they dump their trash, the trailers, defecate in our creeks, and most of these vehicles are not maintained, so oil leaks onto our streets. We, the taxpayers, have to pay for this. They ruin our streets, block our traffic views, degrade our neighborhoods. We also have many other commercial vehicles parking in our residential neighborhoods. These should be left at their employment parking lots, not in residential parking. All this does is promote their businesses, and we, the residents, should not have to put up with this advertising. Council members, all council members, you were elected to solve resident and neighborhood issues and not pass the buck to the residents. As for families living in RVs, it's especially unsanitary for children to live in RVs. It's better for them to live in shelters with proper meals, showers, and beds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name's Al Espindola. I was at last night's meeting listening, and I'm here today again listening. And you know, the ordinance is well written. Callahan does a good job. But it's almost like we have two issues on the table. You have the motorhomes, which are these people's dwellings, and you have the other oversized vehicles that are causing a lot of problems in the neighborhoods. And last night, we had Jan Parker here, and I had an opportunity to have a conversation with one of her representatives this afternoon, and it sounds like they'd like to talk to you guys about this motorhome issue as far as parking or where to park, but there doesn't seem to be any dialogue between the city and the county at this stage of the game. And I don't know why that is, and it's probably none of my business, but I think this conversation needs to be had because you have an issue and all you're going to do is kick the can down the street, unfortunately, because if you run them out of Salinas, they're going to go somewhere else. What you need to do is provide them an alternative. And I think that would be the best answer for everybody involved. But as far as the commercial vehicles, great ordinance. I agree for the most part because of the safety issue for most of us that live in town. For the motorhomes, we need to come up with a solution. You can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
All right, you had one shot. That's all you get, sir.
I won't be back another 2 weeks.
Have a seat. You'll be back. We're not counting on you going anywhere. You'll be back for more items. Thank you, sir.
Remember, all I wanted to say was, remember, you have a first-class RV park that was paid for by federal funds in Sherwood Park.
Thank you,
It's
sir.
ready to, it's turnkey.
Thank you.
It's only used 5 days out of the year.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Becky Johnson. I oppose this ordinance. I want you to think about people who live in motorhomes, and when they drive their motorhome around, they get maybe about 6 to 7 miles per gallon. They pay taxes on that gas. So as you can imagine, an RV owner pays way more taxes per mile than most of us who drive cars. And yet we want to deny them parking spaces differentially from people who have other types, differently shaped vehicles. Now, all these vehicles, I believe, are all legal, right? They're licensed, they're registered, they're insured, they're, and if they're not, we have laws against that, and we can fine them and all that. All of that's in place. But what you want to do is you want to ban these motor homes with people living in them from your entire city, and that's going to solve something. We have, that might be the city or the government reach a little too far. Now, we have a situation right now on our borders in this country where the government is stripping children from their families, and they're telling us this is entirely legal for them to do this. But are they considering what the human toll is for that? This ordinance doesn't. It doesn't provide a place for people who out of economic necessity are living in their vehicles.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Don't do it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Harris. I'm here again. City Council, you need to approve this ordinance. I'm all for the commercial part of it, which we need to keep on improving the system and be effective for our tax dollars. I'm a resident of North Salinas, Creek Bridge area. We have all kinds of problems over there. We're looking forward to this welcoming center on 220 Natividad, which is going to draw more problems to our area. But the RV vehicles, people that's living in their vehicles, something that needs to be done. The state of California has got an excess of money, and they're spending it on illegal aliens, immigrants. I think it's 45 to just approve something like $45 million. What about our American citizens that are living on the street? What about the RV vehicles that these people need? We need to get some money from the state. We need to get some property in South Salinas or someplace near here. We need some lights, need some security systems, some sewage systems. But all this money is being wasted in Sacramento. Where are they getting the money? I think the economy must be improving. They're bragging about how much excess money they have. Why can't the city of Salinas, Monterey County, and the state start spreading some of this money out to American citizens here in Salinas to take care of the homeless problem and make it livable conditions for people that are needy? But again, we're talking about large vehicles. I approve improving this system.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Police are getting 50 million. How much money? 60%. We can enforce the laws. We need to improve the laws. Let's do something about the homeless and the RV vehicles. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon one more time. Dominic Dursa. The one thing I'll mention, and I mentioned it last night, is I find it a little strange, the absence of the business community in this. If commercial vehicles are going to be affected, I would imagine they would have something to say. And yet they were not there last night. I don't see them here today. I imagine getting towed would be quite expensive. And yet somehow nobody from them is making a peep. So what is this ordinance really about? Well, you see the people here who are concerned, and other people who perhaps should be concerned are not, which I find a bit strange. So take it for what you will. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dorothy Perez, and again, I have a tow company. And I would just like to clarify something. There are 8 tow companies with a franchise agreement, and we all tow motorhomes, not just 3. And we're willing to do it, and Callahan knows that because he has sat in our meetings before, our yearly meetings. And it's not that we're fighting it, we just need some help. That's all we're asking for. We're willing to go with what you give us. We're not asking for millions of dollars. Every quarter, we pay you for picking up these motorhomes. You bill us. The city does not get billed. We pick them up, we dismantle them, we take them wherever we have to. We do it. And that's the problem. We're just asking for some help from the city. And if you want to look at our records, we pay you a lot of money. And we do it. To us, the 8 tow companies, it's a privilege to work with the city. We've been here like, I think 10, 11 years or something. We've done a good job. There's times when someone from the city will police, they've made a mistake with someone and they'll call and say, can you help us out? We do it because that's the way it should be. But now that we're asking for help, it's a big deal. And for one, I didn't appreciate this when the response time was, if we have to put our trucks in our yard, someone said up there, well, I'm not worried about it. Let them figure it out. Well, thanks a lot. You know, when it happens that somebody from you needs it, or a good citizen, someone, anyone, they need our help, we worry about it because we have committed to this and we want to do a good job. And I suggest that before you pass this ordinance or you do anything, if you would please meet with us, the tow companies, before you do anything, and let us talk to you, and we can hopefully, you know, come to an agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here to actually speak on a different issue, but seeing that they're talking about this ordinance about these oversized vehicles and it's being brought to you as a safety issue, I'm saying it's not true. Don't believe them. If it was safety, they would start enforcing the laws that are in the books right now, because you could drive down Del Monte any day of the street, any day of the week, and every corner has cars parked there, which makes it unsafe. I've even called 911 because I almost got hit trying to cross that street. And even the operator made fun of me, like, what, do you need someone to be sent to you? I would just inform them. I almost got hit because the traffic laws that are there are not being enforced. So it's happening with just regular vehicles. We're not even talking oversized vehicles. I think this is just some kind of sham to come after certain people, and you're affecting tow companies. I mean, I used to work for a company where I had to have a large vehicle because I was on call doing a oxygen delivery, but you can't have something like that go pick it up at the yard. You got to have the tow trucks or whatever it is you need. Those companies that you're doing business with, you shouldn't affect them and trying to make some law that's trying to, use some kind of sham to come after somebody else, and you're affecting all these other people. I mean, do it for what it is. I mean, there's laws in place right now. If you really care about protecting the safety of the community, start enforcing the laws by not letting people park in the corners as it is already right now. You're letting them do it now. So what makes me think that passing this law is going to automatically make the cops want to start doing more work? They're not doing the work that they have to do right now, because I heard police officers that are that's above them. They don't do that kind of work. But anyways, I'm just saying, don't pass this law. It's a sham, okay? Someone's using it to.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Joanne Robbins. I'm a South Salinas homeowner, resident, and as a relatively new motorcycle rider, if you were talking about banning SUVs, sign me up. I'm all for it, because those people are dangerous. But it's true. As far as an ordinance, it's going to be banning RVs and targeting poor people that have really nowhere else to go. Until we can provide people with somewhere else to go, I think the idea of just telling them to move along is disgusting. I wasn't here early because I was at work. I own a home. It's incredibly disheartening to think that I am one major illness, or maybe even minor illness, away from losing that. And if that happens, that other homeowners and residents of Salinas will all of a sudden see me as a problem, as an other, and as something to be shunted off. I think we need to treat each other a lot better than this. I think that we need to be a lot better than this, and I really hope that you'll keep that in your hearts and minds when you're deciding on this issue.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Gay. I was here at the meeting yesterday, the discussion, and I made a statement which was when will the people help themselves? Meaning, those that live in RVs, you want something from us. You want us to pay for a place for you to move to where you have safety, you have facilities to take care of your needs. But when are you going to start taking responsibilities for the trash that the RV in front of you just dumped out, or the human waste that's dumped out? When are you, as an RV owner and as a homeless person, but you call your RV your home, when are you going to help stop the situation? If you would start cleaning up in front of your own doorstep, maybe the attitude would be a lot different of what other people are seeing. I totally feel inside and hurt when I see a homeless person, especially with a family, knowing that all the things I've gone through life to make it to where I'm at and what I have, and then knowing that some other family could be that far away from being right out there on the street. That's all it takes. The one young lady, she started out with this lady felt was a negative comment, but the minute she said about the homeless, she was ready to start clapping. We're human beings, okay? We express what we have in here, but we also see in here, okay? So I agree, the ordinance portion which pertains to the RVs needs to be
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, Gunther, council members, my name is Leo de la Rosa, and I just want a little light on what I've been through while I was working about 4 years ago. I'm retired now. But anyway, not too far from here is the city of Soledad. I had to go through this because I was taking care of this while I was working. The city of Soledad designated a street. We're living in an agriculture valley here, and that's what we got to accept. I mean, we had the company that I was working for send out buses to pick up people for work up in Soledad. And what was happening, they would go right through town early in the morning, honking and picking up people. So the city came up with this deal that they designated a street for the buses to go in and another street for the buses to go out, okay? Any other bus caught in between the streets, they would fine them, give them a ticket. Okay, so that took care of that. That was the labor buses and pulling toilets, okay? Up in Calexico, San Luis, Arizona, it's the same thing. In Calexico, those companies that didn't have yards to park the buses, they would have to rent or lease a yard to park their buses and accommodate the vehicles, the workers in that same yard. In other words, the workers would come to the yard. From there, they would take the bus, and then they would go out to the field. Again, in a designated street to go in and to go out, okay? Now, the company had to go through a permit. They had to pay a permit. That was in San Luis and Calexico. Okay, you didn't have the buses going all over like we have them here, or even having them in the neighborhoods. Okay. Now, as far as the large vehicles, big semi trucks.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, me again. To respond to Mayor Gunter's remark about the children, I work as a CASA, and it was made very clear to us during our training, merely being unsheltered and not having a home is not grounds for removal or separation, as long as there's a plan in place to provide hygiene and food for the children. So that, I hope, helps set we're not going to be ripping families apart for that. First, we need data. We need to know how many of each type of vehicles will be affected, what businesses are claiming, how much they are claiming is being lost, how much people who are living in their RVs are contributing to local businesses as well. Third, you need to use the tools that you have first. I can't go to my boss and ask for more resources until I prove that I'm using what I already have been given. You're coming to the voters who are your boss and asking for more power. Prove that you are really using what you have with some targeted enforcement and see what a dent we can make, which you can only measure if you have that data in the first place. Fourth, this is a government that is a social contract. That's a form of trade. If you want people to step up, and it is reasonable to demand responsibility, show that you can put your money where your mouth is by making this a time-limited ordinance. Give it a trial for the parking area and give it a trial for the effects of the ordinance. If it's not performing as expected, then you need to revisit it. And as some other people have mentioned, I would highly support separating out the issue of the oversized commercial vehicles, possibly with an exception for the tow vehicles and the RVs. They really are two separate issues.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Aaron Cushman. I'm a homeowner. I own multiple businesses here. I love Salinas. We moved from Santa Cruz 20 years ago for similar issues. I felt like I was paying for a lot of the things I didn't need to. I felt like there was a lot of problems in my lap that I felt were out of control. People parking in front of my house in Capitola, RVs all the time. It got crazy. So we moved to Salinas, and I remember my first Sunday here. We were driving around, and I thought, was something go on? Because things are closed. You know, the businesses aren't open. And I love that hometown feel. We grew to have a ton of pride in this community, so much so, we opened a massive car restoration facility on West Market Street. I have a lot of pride in making sure that everything that comes out of here is the best of quality. I feel like that's all of our responsibility. I plan on being here until I retire. I plan on being here until I die. I feel like there's multiple issues here. I feel like there's a lot of things going on. There's a big homeless issue. My own personal feeling is steps have to be taken to quell it. My fellow business owners, a gentleman said earlier, where's the business owners? I left my business because I was working. And I talked to all my fellow business owners on West Market Street, Toro Petroleum, etc. We're all very tight. And I told them I was going to come here. They said, good for you. Have at it. So in a responsible way, I'm all for this. I can point out 4 motorhomes that aren't registered. They don't even have license plates. I was at a police interaction the other day.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Tom Tessier. I think what you guys are doing is ill-advised. Just Google, you'll find a lot of cities like Portland that have deprioritized what you guys are doing. You're doing everything backwards. Just Google, and you can find cities doing all kinds of stuff. When you guys come in with this heavy-handed stuff, ends up people being displaced. There's people getting rent increases 20, 30%. And then you guys come in and, oh, we're just gonna get rid of these guys, you know. I had a business here for a lot of years on West Market. I don't see any RVs over there. I know where all the RVs are. I volunteered to go help these people. I know a lot of the people. And I think you guys are wrong. You should deprioritize this thing to what you're doing, because you're going to hurt a lot of people, but obviously you don't care.
Hi, Edie Frederick, retired teacher, fortunate homeowner. I would like to concur with the advocates of your reconsidering what you're doing. We haven't put time, energy, financial resources into solving our homeless, or even addressing it. And it hurts. Every day I walk to the bus to see homeless person and more of them every day, and nothing's being done. So I'm here to urge you to bring the community out. We'll come out and help give ideas. As the other gentleman said, online you'll find other cities coming up with great ideas. Tiny homes, putting property aside and backyards, people opening their backyards to put a tiny home. There are solutions, but we're not even thinking about it. So please, let's make our homeless problem our priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Westwise Salinas resident, also president of Salinas Homeless Union. You know, we're thinking about trying to do a litter brigade and a vehicle compliance brigade, and just going out and trying to mitigate the 10 to 20% of vehicles that you're having the serious real issue with. 80% you're not, and I think you pretty well know that. You know, and it's been clearly stated by just about everybody in this room. Only 2 people and one other saying please vote for this, but just about everybody saying either separate it or table it, or I mean even the tow companies, you're going to harm the tow companies on top of this. So there's $2,000 there per vehicle that is not going to impact our fiscal, you know, or are you going to start paying for that? And then does that mean that you lied to the public? So one way or another, we're just going around and around trying to destroy ladders and create more chutes so people can be nowhere. I mean, you know, I remember when I was little, I'd play marbles, and I got really good at it. And I'd kick, I was only like in 2nd, 3rd grade, but I'd be beating the kids in middle school, taking their marbles, gambling as a little kid. And you know what, the only thing that was a really big deal, I couldn't go play for keeps with kids who were littler than me, because they still need to learn how to play. So that's why this separation with the RV thing is so important, because they're too poor to be able to play this big kid game that you're trying to impose. I mean, I hate to be mean, but if you motion for this the way it is, or if you say yes to it, you're turning in your humanity. You're selling your soul. So please don't vote yes for this, or at least cut out actually just table the item. Don't even vote for it.
Seeing no one else, we'll close the public hearing portion. We're going to go back to Councilmember McShane.
Sure. I'm the one that introduced this ordinance last summer. I started working with our city attorney on language. This ordinance comes due to countless reports from citizens in Salinas that have been impacted, not just from health and safety or public safety, but just their own lives. And all lives matter, there's no doubt about it. But I will say that there comes a time when you have to stand up. At the same time, I have to say that this council is committed to addressing homelessness. We've spent more as a portion of our budget than any other incorporated city in Monterey County. We've spent millions, and we continue to be committed to this issue. Last night, Councilmember Barrera and I had a great meeting. If there's nothing else that comes out about tonight or this ordinance, is look at all the people that have shown up. Look at all the people that have paid attention. There's tremendous commitment on the part of the community, this council, and others to addressing homelessness. And I couldn't say stronger that homelessness is not something you can pay off. It's not something you can subcontract. It takes an entire community to be invested in the community to bring about a solution. And to the folks that might be down or might think, oh, nothing's been accomplished, we didn't get anywhere last night, I beg to differ. There are lots of solutions. The commentary about Hartnell College, tiny homes, going about working with the county. The fact that Supervisor Parker was here, I think it was the 2nd time in 8 years she's ever even been in this rotunda. Pretty impressive. At the end of the day, there's short-term solutions and there's long-term solutions. And this ordinance, by some, could be viewed as short-term, but it's a solution. And at the end of the day, to think narrowly, not broadly about homelessness, not broadly about all the issues surrounding homelessness in the city limits, this comes from a large number of complaints from citizens in Salinas. Just use Salinas Connect as an example. In the first 2 months that was online, there were, I think, 4,000 log complaints that came through, and more than half were abandoned vehicles. A good portion of those issues tied to the types of things we're trying to address in this. This is citywide. It still takes into consideration homeowners that are playing by the rules with their toys or whatever they need to do with moving or having guests. And I think the most important thing is that it must be recognized that this council is compassionate, but we have to set limits. We have to. So, at the end of the day, I think this entire council will agree on oversized vehicles. So folks that want to pull that out, I mean, if that's a way to buy time, table it, if that's a way to kick the can further, I'm interested to see what my colleagues will say. But we all agree on oversized vehicles. So what it boils down to is, what do we do about RVs? And I'm ready to move on it. I'd like to move the item. And at the same time, I will commit publicly, and I think this council is committed to continuing to work on homelessness. The dialogue we had last night was a good one, and I'll welcome more of those. That's all.
Councilmember Villegas would like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Alrighty. First, I'd like to thank all the questions and comments by council and the public on the issue. I'm amazed at the fact that people that don't want this ordinance passed have said nothing on the safety of the people living out of the RVs. How safe is it for them? It is not a safe, livable environment to live out of an RV on the streets. It's not fair to them, nor the neighborhood they set up their RVs in to live. It seems like people that want RV living to be allowed in Salinas don't give a lick about the people's safety. We look at the ordinance and stop to think, is this going to make our city better, or are we just being mean people with RVs regardless of their homing status? Everyone on this council has empathy for the people in need, or when their condition is less than what the norm is. I've seen on social media people advocating for the city to go into the RV park business. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen that could cost our city millions. People make the comments about the council only caring about taxes, yet these very taxes we take in have contributed to homeless services in the tune of $4 million over the last 5 years. If we allow RVs or oversized vehicles to be parked in any neighborhood, and for people to live in them on the streets, what do we say to the person's house that they park in front of? What do you tell the single mother that leaves their 14-year-old in charge of their 7-year-old as she goes to her second job just to keep her family in a safe, livable home? As she leaves and sees someone in an RV in front of her home, residents deserve more than leaders that they elect, and they should have a safe neighborhood in which to live. Allowing RVs to be lived out of on any street doesn't seem safe to me, and I'm sure to others as well. People look to government to solve their problems versus neighbors. I haven't heard an idea by people to help out their neighbors. As the lady stated at the microphone, they are our neighbors, and how about those people stepping up to the plate and helping these people by sponsoring them? How about allowing one of these people living out of an RV to stay on their driveway until they can get permanent housing? This won't cost the city a dime, nor have the city venture into the RV park business. Or if the nonprofits like churches open up their parking lots and allow RV living in their lots. These are viable alternatives to mitigate the situations that Al Esmendola talked about. Perhaps passing of this ordinance will make those people against the ordinance step up and help those that need the help. Because although we are hearing a lot of empathy, I haven't heard one person step up, give their info, or take a person living in an RV into their home or wanting to. It is very different showing empathy in words at the podium, but it's much different showing it in action. If people look at government for solutions to situations versus coming up with ones with their neighbors, two things will undoubtedly happen. A decision will be done by us, and the people may or may not like what we decide. Every day, as we drive through our city, we look at all the issues we've seen within it. Wonder, at least I do, how do these issues we face get to this point? Well, we just have to look at the past policies or the lack thereof, because people will do what they are allowed to do in the absence of any restrictions. God gave me 2 ears and one mouth for one reason. One should listen twice as much as they speak. Last council meeting for me just was a listening to people on what they shared, experiences, heartbreaks, life struggles, and questions. Nothing weighs heavier on a policymaker than the question, am I making it better for, is my vote going to make it better? Or is it going to make the situation worse? Am I listening to the issues, and do I have empathy for the downtrodden? No one wants to be wrong, and even more so, many will not admit to it. Even if they are, they'll blame others for everything. But if we're wrong, it does affect people. Some will take responsibility and admit their errors. I can't speak for the others up here, but the lady told us to try living on the streets. Well, I've been there and done that. I've slept in the doorway in the back of St. Mary's Rectory many times with only a sleeping bag. I've lived in an RV for over 6 months back in the early 2000s. Was it easy? Nope. Did I have to adjust? Yep. But one learns to get help, where to get help, adapt, persevere, and overcome situations. California has problems. California has the problems it does because, in my opinion, they've had policymakers, smart people, keep in mind, making decisions with their hearts versus their heads, passing laws, ordinances, or policies that make them feel good about themselves versus tackling the problems at hand. We have more people speaking up in emails and council meetings, on social media, which is great. Everyone offering up their ideas, which is good. But some are not well thought out, and they have no consequences if they're wrong. I read on some sites people wanting to go to the city going into the RV park business, what a disastrous policy that would be. Trying to correct situations that were created with bad policies cannot be corrected with yet more bad policy. This will only shift or give the appearance of something that will be a reprieve or transitory at best. To my colleagues up here, ask yourself, would I be here on council if my platform was allowing people living in RVs or allowing them to park oversized vehicles in front of a home and set up shop on any street in front of any house? Probably not. It's not safe for the residents, nor is it safe for the people living in RVs or crowding the streets with oversized vehicles. What do we want Salinas to look like? The prevalent thinking out there of some people is that if you don't agree with me, you have no empathy, no compassion, we're going to sell our soul to the devil or something of that nature for people, and are a hideous monster that doesn't deserve to be in public office. Compassion and empathy is good, but politicians have turned compassion and empathy into a welfare state at the expense of its citizens and the quality of life. People believe one can build up the weak by pulling down the strong. They cannot. How about having pragmatic housing policies where people are not forced to live in RVs, where rents are reasonable as our housing costs? People come to us to solve their problems or to lay blame versus providing viable alternatives to what is being considered. Citizens think that the government can solve their problems only to have to look at the plight, and if you think that, you only have to look at the plight of the American Indian under the government to realize the truth. We cannot. When you want to help somebody, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. If we do not pass this, many people will hear of Salinas' policies on RV living and move here with their RVs or oversized vehicles. I can park it on any street. They don't care. What will the council members say to the residents when their home is impacted, their neighborhood's impacted negatively? If people want to have RVs or oversized vehicles parked anywhere on the streets and live out of them, they can elect officials that will embrace those policies, because I will always side on the side of a safer neighborhood. If we don't start on these issues now, when are we going to deal with it? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when it gets even worse? You see what California is going through right now. And when you look, just on my drive over here to Texas, it was a long drive. It took us a couple days. We took our time. Yeah. And And one thing I noticed was the people in the U-Hauls towing their car with California plates on it. And I can only, people are voting with their feet. They're getting tired of these California looking the way they are, it is, and leaving. They're leaving for better opportunities, cheaper housing, more affordable rents. One thing about California's policies that have been passed that created this problem, they're actually going to be part of the solution because people are going to vote with their feet, they're going to leave, and that'll bring down the housing prices, that'll bring down the rental prices. Over here in San Antonio, where I'm visiting family, it is incredible the amount of building that's going on, the amount of housing, the amount of land that's out here. You know, voting with your feet sounds pretty good at this point. But I'm okay with seconding the motion to pass this and move this forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Craig. Any comments?
Well, you can imagine what it's like to talk to Tony Villegas on the phone upon occasion, right? Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate it. So I wanted to just, so this is an interesting predicament because I certainly recognize the sensitivity. This council has been incredibly proactive with our homeless population. We have helped build a health center for showers and services and clean bathrooms and ensuring that people get a meal. We have put money forward over the last several years for a warming shelter. We are working with the county on long-term solutions. And there are some real challenges. I understand there are some challenges even with this ordinance. This is a fascinating predicament that I am in because I've had real issues in my district with residents from all over. I had complaints from Pierce, Tyler, Northridge Drive, Van Buren, Willow Street, Northgate Park. I even had a resident in his level of desperation, do the research for the city and pull up a Santa Barbara ordinance on oversized vehicles and try to say, like, look, just copy and paste what the city of Santa Barbara is doing. That photo that was in the presentation last week of the school bus is a personal vehicle. It's a personal vehicle of somebody in my district. We have had multiple complaints about the labor contracting buses who are not listening to the very respectful requests of residents not to be parking all day in the neighborhoods and parking overnight. And so it was why I was supportive of the oversized vehicle ordinance. I'm inclined to support the ordinance as it is, with perhaps some direction to staff to look at some alternatives for our RV situation. And that not making any changes to the initial
I'd take that as a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment.
Yeah.
Then doing some additional work for alternatives for the RVs. But in the case that we are dealing with now, I have to listen to my residents on the north side, and it's been an issue. We're now back in harvest season, and the calls are coming in again. It's the second year that this has occurred. We now have some harvesting companies that are renting houses and putting 17 to 25 people with sets of bunk beds in our residential neighborhoods. And they're not being really great neighbors, which is also part of the problem. So I would just acknowledge, I understand that this may not be the most perfect ordinance, but in terms of addressing the concerns of residents in District 5, residents in District 3, residents in District 4, and we look for some complementary options for RV owners for alternative solutions, I'm open to supporting the ordinance. Thank you.
Gloria's up, and then we'll march down the line. Then I have some comments.
Mayor and colleagues, there's too many issues
tonight, and I think we should pull this item. We need to really reach out to the tow truck drivers, and we need to get more input from the community. We need to try to solve the problem. Like I said, we just keep pushing the problem, and we need to stop, okay? We need to be very, very human about this. Somebody used that word. Well, guess what? We need to have compassion to every single resident from this city and county. And we need to continue those conversations with the county of Monterey, our elected officials, because yes, they need to be responsible, those cities. Some of you were displaced from the peninsula. I know you were. So, you know what? We need to work together and find that solution. And yes, the commercial vehicles, I totally agree. We get the complaints. Let's work together. We have already some ordinances on the books right now that something can be done. So let's work together, but let's table this. Let's have the conversations with ag on the toilets and all that, and maybe, suggest those properties like they have in Imperial Valley, but let's bring everyone to the table before we make this decision. So I recommend, and I hope I have a second to table this. That's fine.
Mayor, I think one of the things that really impacted me was one of our emergency responders, which is, I believe it's Ms. Perez. She has a tow company. She mentioned that there's 8 providers as well. They respond to an emergency, and as I understood it, she's asking to be invited to the table to discuss a plan. I think when an emergency responder is asking, you know what, we want to help, but we're not being really told much, but we will do the job. It costs money. It's a heartless job as well because you're impacting people's lives. I think that triggered it for me where we're not ready to pass this ordinance. And some of my colleagues are saying, let's vote with our head and not with our heart. Well, right here is business. We're the business team, city, administration, police, and the tow company providers are not on the same page. But yet we're going to go out and enforce somebody's life. To the credit of the police department, I honestly believe they have a difficult job, especially in this city. But the residents, the taxpayers, more than half, if I'm correct, you can correct me on this, maybe half or a little bit more than half of all of our budget, our service budget, goes to the police department. And we have ordinances in place. I'm gonna share just some quick thing, and I'm not about a district, I'm about a city. But I've called, I don't know how many times, right on the corner of Laurel and Sanborn, there's a no parking sign there. It's a very, if you ever go from West Laurel to East Laurel, it's very dangerous because it gets very narrow, and there's a sign there that's been there for years. I've lived out there for 40 years. I think that sign's been there as long as I've lived out there. But then there was a second sign right about the same area. Somebody decided to break it, tear it down, and there's only one no parking sign there. There's always a lot of cars parked there and a no parking. And I'm sure there's a lot of great, hardworking police officers that pass by there. They see the sign, they see cars parked there, but we don't do anything for whatever justifiable reason. I called the commander one day because I was told, even Little League parents do this, church people do it. They park on the curbs of the streets. A lot of our neighborhoods, people just decided to park like that. I was told that it's not against the law. I was told that. But yet, it's very difficult to either make a right turn or a left turn. It's difficult, but there's so many cars because of a housing need. So one of my colleagues says, what do we do at this time? Well, just by the comments that I hear, whether it's in business RV user, home, or business, it doesn't look like we're ready to approve this thing. Now, for those of you that decide to break the law and you have an RV and it's unregistered and you're throwing feces into the levee, you should be fined. I don't care how poor you are. You just don't do that. Whether you're rich or poor, you follow the law. If your RV is not registered, then guess what? The police department should go and cite that, but we're not doing it for whatever justifiable reason. And I am concerned here we're going to put, as I've been hearing, this will give us teeth. I think we have teeth right now, but we've been inconsistent. I understand every police officer carries a camera. If there's an RV user that decides to break the law, push the RV because they were tagged, well, the camera will show, hey, wait a minute. Even if you move it somewhere else, you're still going to be fined because you're not obeying the law, and this is not a cat and mouse game. But you know the awesome thing about that? The law is for you and for me. If I break the law, I pay for that. It doesn't matter what social status you are, what color you are, it doesn't matter. If you break that's the way we're gonna make a safer city. But you know what? I see some signs, whether it's a fire hydrant, I see cars parked there. There's a lot of, and I'm gonna use the word we because you know what? We're ultimately responsible up here for the safety of the city. The police department works for the city manager works for 7 people up here. So we're all in it together. But if we're going to make it a safer city, we have to be consistent on law enforcement. And I know we all have our good reasons why it's not happening, but it should. But I hope we work on something. But Ms. Perez, I want to thank you. I think for this one, council member, you brought substance to the meeting. You really did. And for those of you on Griffin, whatever your situation is, think about the businesses as well. Don't just think, oh, you know what, you're picking on me because I'm homeless. No, think about them because they're trying to provide for their families. One business has a lot of overhead, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're a homeless person and you say, well, don't pick on me because I'm poor, well, you think about the person that's trying to pay other people wages. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. We need to clean up Griffin Street. And you know, there's a lot of senior citizens as well in residential neighborhoods, and I'm finished with this one, that are sometimes afraid. I was called by one senior citizen, there's an RV by my house, has been there for 8 days. Can you come and find out what's going on? I went over there and get ready to beat me here. The person that lives in that RV, get the hell out of here. Mind your own business. That was it. Okay, thank you, bye. I'm out of here. But see, but that person justifies himself that they can just park there and make a nuisance of other people's hardworking neighborhoods as well. So we have to come up with the solution. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot's been said up here, and a lot's been said by the public. I will agree that I think these need to be separated. I think we have a clear issue of safety within our residences and within our residential areas on oversized vehicles. And I also think that, you know, there's no need for a semi truck to be parked on a residential street or a trailer, tractor trailer. An oversized bus, as to Kimberly Craig and Councilwoman Craig's statement, a bus has no business being parked overnight on a residential street. I think there's an issue with our tow trucks and the need to have them on rotation to respond in a timely fashion, and we need to take that into consideration, like I said before. I think there's a lot here, and I think that we can all agree on what we call quote-unquote oversized vehicles within our residential areas and our streets, and I don't think there's one council member up here that would disagree. So I'd like to make a substitute motion to table the item and have these issues separated. I'd also like the city attorney to use the definition as given in the vehicle code under 260 of the California Vehicle Code and the definition of a commercial vehicle, specifically sections 233 as what's defined as a bus, and also sections 471 what's defined as a pickup truck, and also the exclusions there within, a tow truck under 615 of the California Vehicle Code and a semi-tractor trailer under 655. I think that when we start using what we already have as what the law that we already have in place under the Vehicle Code and you're able to keep the same definitions and apply them to a city ordinance as opposed to an arbitrary length of a vehicle and an arbitrary height, I think we do ourselves more justice that way, because now we're actually identifying an issue with semi-tractor trailers parked in residentials, with buses as defined in the vehicle code packed in residential areas. And I think it makes it easier, and I'll say from my own experience, when you have the single definition and it crosses over into city ordinance and California vehicle code, as an officer, it's easier to maintain those definitions as opposed to remembering the definition under the city ordinance is this for a commercial vehicle, as opposed to a definition of a commercial vehicle under the vehicle code is X, Y, and Z. And I think that's something that we need to take up a little bit later on is going to be this, the RVs. We already have in place the legalities and the laws. It was within the writing here by Mr. Callahan, the city ordinance for illegal dumping of sewage. We already have under the vehicle code sections 22669 where we can automatically tow a vehicle if it's not in working order. We don't have to wait 48 hours or 72 hours for that. Under 22651 gives more authority to the police department to tow when someone's outside of registration. So we already have these sections in place which we can utilize. We just need to utilize them to hold those who are irresponsible and not following the laws that are already in place and hold them accountable. And we talk about responsibility. That's responsibility. As far as those who are just homeless, who have no place to stay, who have proper registration, who have their sewage squared away and they're dumping it legally, and they don't have any fluids dripping from their vehicle, we need to figure out a solution for those. And I fear those are the 80% of the population that we're talking about. We have the rules and the regulations in place to address the 20% that we're also talking about. Except when we come here at council, I see a lot of public and a lot of people up here included, that we start defining people by that 20%. And no matter what race, religion, creed, national origin, sexual orientation, there's 80 to 20% in all walks of life, no matter where you go. 80% are good, hardworking, law-abiding people, and 20% like to ruin it for everybody else. But as an organization, as a city government, we focus on that 20%, and then we legislate that affects the 80%, the good, hardworking people. And I hate to see us go down that route and pass an ordinance tonight when I think that we can craft something a lot fairer and a lot better to address the 20% outside of what we already have. So that would be my substitute motion, is to take into account the 260 of the vehicle code and split these two apart and address commercial vehicles parked in residentials that everybody up here agrees with, and then to separate and come back at a later time a well-defined definition and maybe a possible solution for the RVs and people camping on the sides of our roads.
A second on that one.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll talk a little bit. There's been some things said that weren't true tonight from the public, and I think for the people watching at home, I always hear, for you at home, let me tell you what's really going on. First of all, Monterey County enforced the homeless motorhome ordinance and ran them off Lapis Road. I've heard how the county wants to work with us. They did. They sent us people in their motorhomes. Marina posted their city, don't bring your motorhome here, we're going to tow it away. So we made sure they kept coming to our city. There is road damage by the big trucks that are in our city because they're driving around our residentials, which aren't paved very well. It's not your fault, Mr. Reynolds. It's just the facts of life. They're worn out. And a gentleman said that there was no motorhomes on West Market. I'm not calling him a liar, but he needs to drive down to West Market and New as he leaves the city and look to his right. There's two down there with no plates, garbage stacked around them, and they're probably dumping their sewage. He should go down there and take a look. Maybe didn't look that way when he was down there. And I heard from the businessman down there, and I've been down there, and I will say this for him. That whole group of business people call me on a regular basis. They have camps up against a petroleum factory down there, and if it ever goes off, you're never going to need to pay a heating bill because we're all going to go up in smoke. So think about that today. To the tow companies, I appreciate your concern, but I was a little offended because I'm aware that we got a letter signed by 8 tow companies saying they weren't going to tow for us until we made a deal on the motorhomes. Someone should get their story straight when they talk to Mr. Callahan, because I felt like you were saying the city wasn't doing their job. Trust me, I'm aware the letter was sent, and that is an issue for us to deal with. So that we will address. Now I have a motion and a substitute. I have a substitute motion and a second, and I have a first and a second on the other motion. So now, City Clerk, the fun begins. We're going to vote on the substitute motion first. Do you understand the substitute motion, City Attorney?
Yes.
Councilmember Barrera?
Yes.
Councilmember Craig?
No.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember De La Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember McShane?
No.
Councilmember Villegas?
No.
Mayor Gunter?
No. Now we'll go to the first motion, but before we go to that, I need clarity from Councilwoman Craig about dividing of that motion or what you wanted to do, because my legal understanding from council is that if we divide that,
Mr. Mayor, I made no such comment. I said I was fine with the ordinance as presented, but that staff direction perhaps is to have further discussion about additional options for RVs later on down the line. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Even though, and Mr. Callahan, maybe if you could correct me if I'm wrong, but the motion at the table was what Councilmember McShane and Councilmember Villegas had first and seconded. Despite Councilmember Craig's request, there would be no, that's not part of the motion. So
It was a friendly amendment.
So is this going to be a substitute motion on behalf of Councilmember Craig?
No.
And then can you comment, Mr. Callahan, on friendly
Clarifying my
amendments,
friendly amendment.
Well, first of all, the friendly amendment wasn't agreed to by the person who seconded the motion, so we have an issue that we need to deal with there. What I understand the original motion to be is to adopt the ordinance as presented. And so that's where I'm focused on right now. Unless Councilmember Villegas wants to accept that second, or that friendly amendment that Councilmember McShane seemed to be receptive to.
That's fine. I mean, if we want to revisit that later on down the road, but I want to go through with the second and get this moving and get a vote on it.
Okay, so as I understand it, then it's the original ordinance as presented, but with direction to staff to continue to explore alternatives to that RV option, so that the ordinance as presented, as written, does not change.
Correct.
That's correct.
That'll be the motion that the council will be voting on.
I have a point of order again, Mr. Callahan. So just correct me if I'm wrong, then even with the recommendation from Ms. Craig, if the council was, or if you were to come back at a later time with an amendment to this ordinance, we'd have to go through the process again.
That's correct.
So the initial amendment, the initial motion, as it's written today, is what we're voting on right now, with the second from Mr. Villegas.
The ordinance as presented is what you're voting on tonight.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barrera?
No.
Councilmember Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
No.
Councilmember De La Rosa?
No.
Councilmember McShane?
Yes.
Councilmember Villegas?
Yes.
Mayor Gunter?
yes.